Perfect. Great. Well, like I say, it's going to be a very in-depth session. So what we'll do then is, if you're happy, if you've got questions, rather than wait till the end, and obviously we'll go through. If you've got questions as we're going through, it's probably easier we just jump in and out, and obviously ask any questions as we sort of go through. Off the back of this as well, there are some bits that I'll share. So if I take your contact details, there are some bits that we can share off the back of this. It's basically, when we get to the strategies section, it's how we actually do that. So I'll talk a bit about what they are, but how you actually can implement them at site, and that we've got a few documentation that we then provide to customers to go, here's what we recommend you can do for X, and so on. So we'll share those afterwards. Hey, you all right? Don't worry, right at the start.
Yeah, that's fine.
So where are you from, sorry?
Fitness Face, Henley.
Oh, perfect, yes.
We've got something with you, actually.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Well, literally just kicked off, and I mean, like I was saying there, is what we'll be looking at is, we say sustainability, and we'll go into what that means in a second, but what we're really looking about is the sustainability of a gym in general. So as I said to you before, I know when people hear sustainability, they think of, we're going to be talking about just the environment in general, but what we want to talk about within this is sustainability in a gym, and most specifically related to your gym equipment within that. So sustainability is a sort of definition, if you will, of that word. I hear you, okay? Sustainability is a definition of that. So what most people think, as I've just sort of said there, is that a lot of people think of sustainability and think of just the environment and all those sorts of pieces here, which is true. So sustainability is sort of broken down into three pillars is what they look at, and that's environmental, economic and social. I'll get into the detail of how that applies to gym equipment, in a moment. But just as an overall view, environmental sustainability is exactly what you're thinking of. It's what is the impact on the environment. So things like, and I'll touch on it later, but things like the equipment manufacturing, so the parts that go with that, and obviously the impact on the environment that comes along with manufacturing new pieces of equipment, the disposal of that kit at the end of its life, and things like that. Economic sustainability, what we're looking about there is resources effectively. So we're thinking of spend. So being more economically sustainable is managing your finances a bit better, whether that's through the operation of the equipment or whether that's through doing different practices to make your equipment last longer. And then finally, sort of social sustainability. So what we're looking about there is almost what you mentioned earlier. This is sort of community feel. So social sustainability in a gym environment, we'd be talking about things like member engagement, member satisfaction, and being more sustainable for your members. So as I say, the aim of this today is to focus more around the equipment in your sites and how we can improve that, not what the sort of general view of sustainability is. And as I said at the beginning, by the way, everyone, if you've got questions as we go through, please do just jump in. I'd rather we obviously can jump in on those as and when, rather than wait until the end, because obviously if it's relevant now, it might be relevant for other people as well. Now, how does gym equipment impact on your sustainability? So I'll just sort of keep it within those three topics that we spoke about before. So we've got environmental. So what we're looking at there is typically things like energy consumption. So obviously when we've got our cardio equipment plugged in, that's having a big drain in terms of energy, and obviously there has a massive impact on the environmental sustainability of your business. Manufacturing and disposal are sort of linked together, so really there we're talking about the manufacturing of the equipment that you're purchasing. Not just that, but also obviously parts on an ongoing basis, the technology that goes with that, so digital consoles, all those sorts of bits are tied into that. And then obviously it's end of life, the disposal of that as well. You know, ideally, and we'll touch on this in a minute, we can reuse equipment, whether that's in communities or other sites, or there are ways of upgrading that, because obviously the disposal, we're talking landfill sadly and things like that. Economic, almost exactly as it sounds for you, it's that life cycle cost and replacement cycle. So linked to that initial investment of the equipment at the beginning, it's the cost that's associated with having gym equipment. So obviously that's the first initial purchase, which obviously is quite a significant investment for a lot of sites. but then also the ongoing investment that you've got to do with that equipment to keep it going and the costs again associated with that. And then obviously replacement cycles. So does anyone know typically how often equipment's replaced in the UK fitness industry at the minute? It's not a trick question, don't worry. So current cycle of equipment in the UK is 7 years. Now, obviously, as you guys will know, running your own sites, buying a full set of new equipment every 7 years is a significant investment. I'll touch on something later on that will apply to that, but from an economic point of view and a financial stability point of view and financial sustainability of your centre, if you were having to replace your kit every 7 years, that's a huge cost that we've got to look at, because obviously the impact of that will go further, won't it? It affects how much money you've got and cash flow for things like just keeping the building going, staff wages, everything. And then finally, the gym equipment's impact on social sustainability. So we're almost talking about customer satisfaction, NPS basically there. Obviously, brand new equipment, great, members' satisfaction through the roof, but then over that period of time, as it gets older and older and older, how does that impact on your sustainability of that? So member satisfaction, if the equipment's not well looked after and it starts to become run down, longer downtime of equipment and breakages of equipment. And really, everything on this list is sort of a cycle of each other. So obviously, everything links to it. So that life cycle cost then means that impacts your member satisfaction if equipment's not at its perfect operating condition, which then links you back to potentially having to buy new equipment, and then the economic cost that goes along with that, and so on and so on. So these three sort of pillars are all tied together in terms of just making your business sustainable. So obviously with that, I mean, perfect world, everyone would be great at this, right? And no one would, it'd be really simple to do, but there's obviously challenges that go along with that. So I won't go through absolutely every single one. And as I say, we'll share this off the back with a few other bits as well. But as a very basic level, number one, high energy consumption. You know, obviously one of the biggest bills, if you will, in running your site is always going to be your energy bills. Now, typically a lot of people only associate that with things like heating, lighting and bits like that. But obviously high energy consumption, it's your equipment that's sat on all day potentially. Again, something we'll touch on in a moment. And obviously then the impact that then has on your economic sustainability as well as your environmental sustainability through using fuel to basically fuel that energy in your building. Frequent breakdowns, it'd be great if kit just ran perfectly and nothing ever went wrong with it, obviously. But again, that links back to that economic sustainability, because the less we look after a piece of equipment, the more likely things are to fail. And obviously over time, if we don't take care of those things, then they can actually create bigger problems within the equipment that then become more expensive or harder to fix. And again, it links back to that social sustainability, because if your equipment doesn't run as smoothly as it should do, or it's breaking very often because of that, then obviously then member satisfaction and even staff satisfaction with that will decline. Premature replacement, sorry. So linked to that frequent breakdown, obviously if equipment isn't well looked after, it's more likely to break quicker and earlier, which might mean at some point you're going to have to replace it sooner than you wanted. So we said that 7-year cycle is what most places are on. There will be times when people are having to, not wanting to, but having to replace equipment even as little after 2-3 years of usage. And obviously then again, and apologies, I will keep linking this always back, you then go back to that environmental impact through having to manufacture that new piece of equipment to replace that one. The economic impact, because obviously new equipment's very expensive. And then obviously the social impact actually would be a positive at that point, but it's obviously led to that point that you've had to then get that replacement. Environmental impact obviously touched on. Inefficient asset utilization. So obviously what we mean by that is basically not necessarily understanding either A, what the members are looking for, or B, what actually the members are using. So again, I'll touch on it when we get to the strategy section, but asset management isn't just looking after it and making sure it's in a good working condition. It's actually using the information that service providers like ourselves and others can provide you to be able to understand what is good for your club. So, and purely based on usage patterns, and obviously then you can use the breakdown frequency to assess that as well. And then I'll just cover off the rest of them as a whole. So staff training, things like obsolete technology have a massive impact on the sustainability of a business. Purely because if we just look at it at a complete basic level, if your staff are not able to help members on that equipment or communicate how they use it effectively and also look after it effectively, we're going to be back to this premature replacement and frequent breakdowns. And then obviously the impact that has as we keep going back to on both environmental, economic and social sustainability. And the final one I'll touch on there is that limited maintenance budget. So as we say, one of the biggest investments most sites will have is that new equipment, which is great. Everyone loves new equipment, but then it's important that we do assign a maintenance budget, however small or large that might be. And the reason for that is obviously, as we were saying before, that the current cycle of kit in the UK is 7 years. With a fully structured maintenance program, and this is an internal program, so your own staff looking after the equipment on a day-to-day basis, you can increase that by a minimum of 3.5 years just by having a structured maintenance program. Within that is where then we look at that maintenance budget for the actual failures and repairs that need to go along with that. But really all we're talking about to support you on, and this is things that we'll share after today, is what does a good maintenance program look like internally? Okay, is there any questions at all? Nothing? So benefits, there's obviously got to be some benefits. I've talked about how everything's really difficult and it's doom and gloom. So there's obviously got to be some benefits. So operational efficiency, and what we mean by that is the better your equipment is looked after, the less problems you're going to have. And that's ultimately all we're trying to do here. So that can be everything from you guys as managers having to constantly deal with getting repairs done, dealing with member complaints, but actually all the way down to your frontline staff, that if they can spend less time having to worry about getting that piece of equipment fixed, they can actually focus a bit more on just that member engagement piece. Again, linking back to that social sustainability. So because you're operationally efficient, because we're looking after the kit well, we're going to be environmentally sustainable because we're not having to get new equipment as often. We're going to be economically sustainable because we're not having to spend as much money with new equipment or frequent breakdowns. And then socially sustainable because we're going to drive member engagement, there'll be more member satisfaction because that equipment that they pay to come and use is always at its best condition. Cost savings sort of touched on already, but obviously the better we look after equipment, the less spend that there is overall. So in a long-term strategy, we're not having to buy kit brand new as often. Yes, we're still going to have to assign budget and spend on ongoing repairs but that's the nature with absolutely everything that we purchase. But in terms of that, you'd be spending a lot less on that sort of regular day-to-day maintenance than having to replace equipment with a huge budget every so often. Energy efficiency. So this goes back to what we're talking about, asset management again. Now, what we mean by energy efficiency is, and we'll touch on strategies in a second, is the better you look after your equipment, the less energy you will use. And we mean this in the sense of, it might be that, I don't want to get too far ahead, but we're looking at what kit's being used and when. Is there opportunities to actually be a bit more sustainable by having certain types of kit that might go into a standby mode, or certain self-powered machines as well within that? Or even that we understand our off-peak and peak times well enough that we can influence equipment, whether it's on or off, or whether it needs to be on for that entire period of the day. And also, because we would understand the needs of the members better, because we understand what assets are being used, it might even be that we might want and desperately need that all singing, all dancing digital aspect to the equipment that obviously is a huge power drain. But actually, is that right for your club? If it is, no problem at all, that's something we've got to accommodate. But it might not be what's needed or required in your club. Or even if it is there an opportunity to look at a mix of kit? So we can actually start to look at doing a bit more strategic replacement of equipment with different levels depending on the member requirement. And then off the back of that, we then gain that cost saving and energy efficiency. And I'll just jump ahead to number 6. So extended equipment lifespan. the number one thing that effectively we at ServiceSport are here to try and do for people as well. So that initial investment is a huge investment, just like you were buying a brand new car, whatever it might be. It's obviously one of the major outlays that a centre will have. And what we want to be able to support with is making that last as long as possible for you. Not to the extent where you're flogging a dead horse or anything like that. We just want to be there to help you gain the most of that initial investment. And asset management is the key to that. As I said it at the beginning, there isn't anything crazy and brand new in this world. It's doing basics and just doing them really well. If you can extend the life of your equipment by 3.5 years simply by having a robust management plan, not that you won't ever get new equipment again, but it gives you a bit of extra time to pull together that might be the budgeting that you need to do for that. It also means that actually you can start to look at a bit more strategic replacement of equipment, because if it's looked after better, you might not need to replace your strength as often as you're looking to replace your CV and things like that. So rather than that huge one-off cost and the impact of that, you can actually start to spread that over a period of time to be more economically sustainable, but also keep that member satisfaction high and therefore socially sustainable as well. And employee productivity I've sort of touched on in the operational efficiency, but as we were saying again, even though it would be taking up their time to do regular maintenance and regular day-to-day checks on the equipment, by doing that, what that'll allow them to do is focus once a week, a couple of hours, an hour in the morning, just to make sure everything's functioning as it should do, and then reporting it to the correct whoever you might work with, whether that's us or another independent provider or the manufacturer. It means that they can actually focus on what you're employing them to do. So they can be there interacting with your members on the front line. They can actually be there doing the jobs that you want them doing, rather than necessarily having to be constantly battling, trying to find out where a repair's up to or bits like that, purely because we're just looking after the kit a bit better on a day-to-day process. So strategies. So as I said at the beginning, what we'll do is we've got actual PDF versions of this. So this is going to be a bit of a high-level touch on what we would recommend, but we'll share this with everybody off the back of it if I just take your contact details. So number one, life cycle planning. But what does that mean? Here, what we're talking about, so I'll tell you what, actually, has anyone recently bought a set of new equipment, or are they looking at buying a new set of equipment at all? Or is it just bought?
Yeah, so it's part of National Fitness Day, and we upgraded a lot of our machines. We bought some new weights, new lifting platforms and stuff like that, just refreshing up all downstairs. We have a little bit of a
perfect. Yeah. Anyone else? Last year? Yeah. So what we're looking at here is looking at when we are looking at upgrading equipment. Again, we're an out of warranty service provider, but we know that new equipment is needed. But all we are looking at is to help and advise you on how you can make that life cycle of that equipment last as long as possible. So it's looking at every stage of that. So we're talking here about acquisition. What we mean by that is who we're actually working with. Is it a commercial grade product? Will it last when it's in your centre, getting that heavy usage? And also, what is the future proofing of that as well? And it's things to consider when you're looking at new equipment. What is the parts provision of that? So speaking to people that maybe already have that type of equipment in, once it's outside of that warranty period, how have they got on with maintaining it past that period? Obviously, perfect world, and money being all there, we would just refurbish gyms all the time, every year. It'd be amazing. But obviously, it's just an important piece that sometimes is missed when we're actually looking to identify a provider of equipment. And also, just in terms of sustainability, just procurement. So is this company, is it sustainable? And what we mean by that is, obviously, at the moment, it is huge in the industry, not just our industry, but everywhere, that everyone is trying to be that more eco-conscious. So is that person that you're working for an eco-conscious provider as well? Is it equipment made in the UK? Is it equipment made abroad? And obviously the impact that does have on any economical or sustainable goals you might have internally. Installation and setup and utilisation and maintenance were sort of band together. What we mean by that is taking advantage of your current gym. So I used to do a lot of refurbishments in the past in a previous role. And when you want to set up a new gym, you want to make that big wow impact. So we were talking environmental changes as well. So flooring, lighting, everything like that. From a sustainability point of view, and if there isn't the money to be able to do that, what we want people to think about and look at is utilising your existing space. So could you design your gym in a better way that takes advantage of what you've already got, rather than having to then, as well as get the new equipment, upgrade the lighting in certain areas because it's darker in that space? Could we move that to take advantage of natural lighting? And when you're considering doing new gyms, think about what you've already got. So is your air conditioning set up correctly, and then providing your refurbishment based on that, because we're going to want the air conditioning set up over certain pieces of kit because that's where it's going to be needed the most. What that then allows you to be is more sustainable in the sense of cost. You're not having to have huge outlays on environment as well as the equipment, which we've said before is a massive cost to begin with anyway. And you can also just take advantage of what you've already got, whether that's a reshuffle or whether the current layout's perfect, and that would be the ideal world, obviously, and we can just trade kit straight in. But it's just things to consider again. And then the long-term maintenance of it. So as we've sort of said, the current cycle of kit in the UK is 7 years, and with a good maintenance program, which is the next slide, we know that we can extend that to an extra 3.5 years, So in terms of life cycle planning, it's important that we're going back again to what is the parts provision. So whether that be through the manufacturer maintaining that kit long term, or whether that be an independent service provider as well. Does the equipment that you're selecting in your clubs have the ability to be well maintained, well past its warranty period? Upgrades and replacements. So again, as I said before, great, it'd be perfect if everyone could get new, but from a sustainability point of view, obviously every time new equipment is manufactured, there's a huge impact in terms of the environment, the wastage cost that goes along with that, the energy consumption that goes along with producing new equipment. So if you are trying to be a bit more environmentally sustainable, it's something to consider to look at upgrades and replacements rather than new. So for example, that might be that, typically there will never be much wrong with your free weights kit. But a lot of people, because they'd be getting new CV, say, will just get new everything. So a good option with upgrades and replacements is actually looking to strategically do it over a period of time. So that's where maybe you'll actually just get your free weights equipment shot blasted and resprayed and refreshed rather than purchasing new. You already own that asset, you've already paid that initial fee for it, and simply by paying a top-up fee, if you will, you can actually extend the life of that piece of kit even further, rather than having to buy a brand new one. The one you've got is off into landfill and those sorts of bits, and obviously the impact that has. This then also links back to, and I keep saying it, so apologies, but to your economic sustainability, because as I say, it's more financially viable to be able to do that. You don't necessarily have to, you can replace your CV brand new, which is still a huge cost, but by simply upgrading the rest of your equipment, you can bring the entire gym up to the same level, but by applying different costings and different formats. And then monitoring and data analysis. What we mean by that is basically, say you're at this point, you've already purchased this equipment, so almost where you might be, where you've got your equipment last year, it's then monitoring it over a longer period of time to understand was that the right equipment for us at the time. And it might have been at the time, but it's understanding them for when we get to that next period where maybe there is some budget available to refurb and refresh again. Have we selected the correct equipment? So we operate a system that allows you to track all defaults with your equipment over time. So you'll have the full historical data of that equipment. We're talking things like monitoring usage of the equipment, monitoring its location, monitoring the spread of usage within that as well. And then also tracking any faults with it effectively over a period of time. So typically, and it is typically, the more a piece of equipment fails, it's probably being used more. So something as basic as, which I'll touch on in a second, something as basic as using that data to help you recycle the equipment in your gym. So an example of that might be that we've done recently with a customer is the 10 treadmills. First 5 in the door, we are repairing on a monthly basis for them. The second 5, barely anything that we do with them. And it's purely down to the fact that they're the first 5 treadmills in the door, they're the first 5 people get on. But what the customer is able to do is see from that data tracking that actually, as simple as swapping those over, they can now continue to extend the life of that equipment until they're in a position, if they want to replace them or can replace them. It just means, again, and this is how we extend that life of the equipment, by spreading usage. And it always comes back to a piece of equipment that's having constant repairs against it will be a bit more worse on its energy consumption. That sounds terrible, but it will use more energy because it's having more usage, it's older, it's having its parts replaced more. So actually, again, just simply by rotating equipment, because you know what the usage patterns are, you can extend the life of the equipment and basically get the most out of that initial investment. Because as we keep going back with, when you buy new equipment, that is one of the biggest investments you'll probably do as a gym. So you want to make sure that obviously you're getting the most out of that money over a period of time. Regular maintenance. So I wouldn't be ServiceSport if I didn't speak about regular maintenance. It is what we do. Again, we'll provide basically off the back of this what we suggest that customers look at as a regular maintenance program. And that's not us coming out to do it, that this is some simple stuff that you guys can be doing insights to extend the life of that equipment, be more sustainable for both your own financial sustainability, but also your own eco-sustainability as well. So I did say at the very beginning, it did say innovative ideas. Honestly, doing the basics and doing them really well is what will have the biggest impact. And here we're talking about just day-to-day inspections. I mean, if you don't mind me asking, and people please be honest, who can say that absolutely day-to-day, weekly, monthly checks are all going ahead without fail in their sites? And it's not a trick question.
Yeah, we do.
Perfect.
We clean over monthly, we do.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what those points do, because I mean, we clean everything with lubrication, like is that WD-40, or what does that?
Yeah, so this is what we'll share off the back. I'll go through it high level today, but we've got basically a full program that we'll share, and we can even provide where you would get certain, and we can provide things to you that will enable your guys to be able to do this. So all we're talking about here when we talk about regular maintenance is probably the wrong word to have used, because that's what our engineers would do. What we're talking about is daily equipment checks. And we're not saying that the guys have to be stripping machines down or anything like that. We are honestly talking as basic as a functional test of the piece of kit. So going on the treadmill, walking, running on it for a minute, 2 minutes at most. And then logging any problems straight away. So whether you work, so I will use us as the example. We have a digital platform, so everyone has access to that. So say, for example, I'm doing my daily equipment checks this morning, and treadmills 1, 5, and the chest press, and such a thing has a problem with it. It doesn't sound right, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't look right. That's sort of the 3 things that we say to look for. We log it on our platform. Depending on the type of cover you have with us, on an all-inclusive basis, we send someone out to come and assess that. We send not me, definitely not, one of our professional engineers who will come out and investigate that problem that you found. Now, what we find is customers that are able to tick all these boxes of that day-to-day maintenance need us a little bit less. But what it means is for you as a centre, the reason for that is you're looking after the equipment better. A well looked after piece of kit will function better, it will draw less power, and the regular preventative repairs means that something as simple as a damaged bearing in a bike, if taken care of straight away because you're aware of it instantly, for a matter of £20 for that new bearing, what you're actually preventing is any further damage being caused by that damaged part. And overall, it takes us back to extending the life of that piece of equipment. So example might be that we have had this in the past, that, as I say, that bearing goes, it's making that rattling noise and everyone knows it's there, but it just doesn't get taken care of. We finally get called out, but what it means is that the crank arm's also gone, the internal mechanisms have also gone, as well as the bearing. So for the sake of what would have been a very simple, quick repair at the very beginning, it suddenly sort of explodes out into a much bigger repair and a much more costly repair. And obviously from a sustainability point of view, that's going to have a bigger impact on your costs, a bigger impact on your social sustainability, because that machine won't have been functioning well for that member. And then obviously from the environmental point of view, that a less well looked after piece of machinery isn't going to last you as long, and then it's going to push you to having to get a new machine earlier than you might have wanted to or needed to. But as I say, off the back of today, we'll share a full program of works that we recommend to do on a daily, weekly and monthly basis for sites. And that is just internal things that people can do. So lubrication will have its own timeline. So CV kit will last a different amount of time to strength kit, even when both well looked after. But that doesn't mean then when it starts to go, or you're ready to get new cardio equipment, you want that digital upgrade, it doesn't mean that we have to do that fell swoop replacement of absolutely everything, especially when some of that equipment might be working perfectly well because of how well you've looked after it. So what we mean by upgrade is basically looking at a refresh of your existing equipment. Again, everything we're talking about today is to try and maximize the lifespan of your kit and therefore that initial investment and get you the most for that money, if you will. And this is where I sort of spoke before of this top-up fee, if you will, to be able to upgrade your equipment for a significantly less amount than buying new. And obviously what goes along with that is that environmental sustainability through not having to purchase and have manufactured a brand new piece of kit. That economic sustainability because of the cost saving that goes along with that. And then also that social sustainability because at the end of the day, upgrading equipment is always going to be good for member satisfaction. But what we look at there is upgrade versus buying new. So say, for example, you want to upgrade your CV equipment because you want the new digital consoles and you're currently on LCD. No problem at all. What are we going to do with our strength? And a lot of the time, people will just refurbish the entire gym. What we can do is still push towards that new CV option with that digital aspect, but your strength equipment might be in perfectly good form. It might look a bit tired or it might have a few problems with it, but if it's been well looked after, strength kit is absolutely bomb-proof, as you guys probably know. But what you can do to match that up across your gym to make sure that everything's up at that same level is refresh that equipment. So an example of that is where basically you can take that away. So we do this as a service as well, but other operators do. You strip the machine back to its bare frame. So it's sandblasted, all the parts have come off, all the plastics, pulley wheels, everything like that if we're talking a piece of strength. Shot blasted back to its bare metal. It's resprayed as a new frame would have been. It's resprayed in, well, whatever colour people might want, but say it's just that jet black that's out there at the moment. And then new parts go back on that machine. So new upholstery, new cables, new plastics, or the plastics, if there's nothing wrong with them, are reused. And the same with any sort of rubbers and grips are all replaced where needed. So effectively, bar the frame of it, a new, because of the sum of its parts all being new, for a fraction of the price, you've been able to upgrade your strength while getting that new CV. And the cost saving you make on not having to buy brand new strength might support you in getting an even higher model of the cardio equipment that you're looking for. Or it might be that money can then be reutilised somewhere else in the club, whether that be in new lighting, air conditioning, or decoration, anything at all. And what it just means is that a new piece of equipment isn't being manufactured because it didn't need to, because of how well you've looked after the original. Economic sustainability, and I keep going back, I know, but economic sustainability because it's certainly nowhere near as expensive to upgrade a piece of kit versus buying brand new. And then also, from the member's perspective, everything is getting an upgrade of some sort. Okay? So that's that enhanced member satisfaction without compromising yourselves on your own sustainability, if that makes sense. And the financial flexibility is what goes along with that. So again, typically people replace equipment after 7 years. What we're talking about here is having a more long-term strategy. So it might be after 7 years, that's when you are going to do the CV. But it might then be after 9 years that then you refresh your strength. And it then might be after the 12-year period that then your free weights get that as well. And then you're back on that cycle for your new CV, or maybe that's the time now to get new strength because it is at the end of its life. And it just means that you're able to keep this constant upgrade of your gym without having a huge impact on both, excuse me, on the environment, most importantly your economic sustainability, but you're maintaining that customer satisfaction as well, because I'm not saying necessarily every year, but there's a constant cycle of new equipment coming in or upgraded equipment coming in, rather than that fell swoop every 7 years and it's then 14 years and so on and so on. And then finally, on terms of strategies, so these are just the top 4 that we've picked out. So digital asset management. Now, this links me back, so you'll know about this with us, working with us, no? You will know. You will know. So effectively with this is just an example site. So I'll show you our system in a moment. But effectively what we're talking about here is knowing what needs replacing, knowing when it might need replacing, but also using this to track your own costs and be a bit more sensible with how maybe spend is being made, and also track the usage of your equipment. So this is just one small example. So this is a treadmill, in a site of a customer that we have. So this goes back probably 20 jobs as we would scroll down, and effectively on our system, and again, this is just part of working with us, and a cost to this system, whether you're on the fully all-inclusive contract or just with us for a day-to-day ad hoc customer. You can then track every job we've ever done against that piece of machinery, what we did with it, what the working condition of it is, and how our engineer rates that machine, even to the extent if you wanted to know what parts you're actually using a lot of. What this helps you do with us as well, and working together on this, helps you understand, was that initial investment the right investment? So was the equipment mix that you chose the correct one? B, where are you getting most of the problems in your club? And C, what it also allows you to do is understand the cost implications of that regular maintenance. So typically what we will find, and we see this on our system, this would be a much longer list in sites that don't look after their equipment well. In a site that does, we are rarely called out. We're just there as the professional to fix any broken parts, because all we go out to do is preventative maintenance for them. And what I mean by that is we get there before it becomes a failure. So for example, this club here, so we've got a running belt in there. So the example of that might be is when we're doing these daily checks, that belt looks extremely worn. So we know in maybe even a day, a week, it might even be a month that it still lasts for, but that belt will fail, which means that piece of kit's out of order to your member. It means that then if we're then logged with it the day after it fails, we'll be there within 72 hours, and then we'll refit the belt. But that machine has gone out of order when actually we knew about this before it actually went out of order. And this is what we mean by working with your teams to do a regular, robust maintenance plan and then logging that with a professional body, whether that's us or another provider. It just means that, again, we're being more sustainable in general. So it means that from an economic sustainability point of view, we're replacing parts that need to be replaced quicker, which with the example before, that then if they're not looked after there and then, it can lead to further failures which become more and more expensive. And then from that social point of view, members can see obviously that equipment's well maintained, their equipment's not out of order, they don't have to worry about whether they can get on a piece of kit because 5 might be broken or anything like that. But yeah, as I say, you can track the whole history of this, and what it allows you to do is just understand how your equipment is being used. And then this might be, I'm just going to skip ahead a slide. This might be where you then use this as an example. So I won't say who the customer is, but we are on an all-inclusive agreement with the customer for £948 a month to cover all 78 assets. That's all call-out, labour, parts, whatever goes wrong with that kit in that club is built into that. Now, the CV equipment in that club is 12 years old, so it's outside of that 7-year cycle that we've spoke about. This site does have a good maintenance program because we've worked very closely with them on it. However, they were experiencing 23 call-outs a month just for their cardio equipment. Now, that's not that they're not doing something well, that's not that we're not doing something well, it's purely the volume of usage that they're getting was extremely high, and that equipment was 12 years old. Now, what they chose to do with us is actually refresh that equipment. Obviously, if you were to buy brand new, the amount of CV that they had, we'd be looking at an £85,000 spend. And then the environmental impact that goes along with manufacturing new equipment, the economic impact that goes along with that. Now, it would produce a good social impact though. We would never say it wouldn't. But for a much lower fee, if you will, this sort of top-up fee that we spoke about, we've refreshed that equipment for them. So they've taken the initial saving and the cost sustainability, if you will, on not buying brand new. They've taken a further saving from this overall cover fee, reducing for the 2-year warranty that equipment goes back in with. And then what they've seen is that social sustainability increase, because instead of them having 23 problems on their CV every single month, that dropped to 2.7 over a 6-month period on average. So what we're saying out there is, this is where we're going back to there are other options out there for you. So if you are keen to be a sustainable, just purely, even if it was just purely from an environmental point of view, upgrading what you've got and maximising your initial investment will have a huge impact on that. It might be that all we're talking about is being economically sustainable, which is absolutely fine as well. If something can be done for a better cost, then brilliant, because you're still then getting that maximum life out of your original investment. Yes, we've topped up that, if you will, but obviously the other side of that would have been spending an additional £60,000 to be able to bring that in brand new. What this site's then done is added a further 5-6 years to that equipment, which allows them time to pull together. It might be that they're now looking at that, but it's now, and they can offset that by another 5-6 years and use that time to pull those funds together. Or it might even be that then they look at their strength the following year, the year after, and over time they can have a continuing, I say churn, but a continuing investment in their estate. So, and I'll just jump back to that one now. So this is what we're saying, and again, I know we use the word sustainable, and a lot of that has connotations of being just purely about the environment, but hopefully today I just talked a little bit about how that can actually be seen across your business, not necessarily just from an environmental point of view, but an economical and a social point of view. And all we're actually talking about at its core is looking after the equipment that you've got. And that's not to say you don't, obviously, but there can always be better ways of doing it to extend the life of that equipment and extend that initial investment. And the idea of this is obviously, if without it, we then get our equipment breakdowns, the member dissatisfaction that obviously goes with that, and then we are forced to buy new equipment to get rid of that, okay? Whereas what we're trying to say here is that obviously with new equipment and a robust maintenance strategy, you can, and then upgrading equipment, a good maintenance program, you can actually just make that life cycle of that equipment last even longer, and therefore spreading the cost of that initial investment and maximizing it. All that might be is what that allows you to do is not spend as much as often. And as simple as just looking after that equipment better, because honestly, you wouldn't believe how many customers we do work with that don't necessarily just do some of these basics really well. But the impact that those basics can have is, as I say, as a minimum, another 3 years of life onto that kit. Working as it should do. It's not that we're saying there's an additional 3 years of it crumbling and falling apart on your gym floor. It's an additional 3 years of life in it and getting the most out of that initial investment. And just to give you I missed this slide before, so apologies, but I don't know how well you can see that in this light, but this is the refresh CV that we did at this customer's site. So they're probably not the best photo, so apologies. That one on the end is, I mean, when we actually put these back into a club, strength has a lovely appeal to it because it does look brand new when it goes back in. The CV especially, it looks brand new, it can go along with brand new equipment. It doesn't have that impact of making it stand out against any new equipment that you might have bought. And it's just another option for clubs to have and companies to have that can help you be more economically sustainable, but also environmentally as well, while also making sure that you're delivering on the member expectations of good quality, good working, and nice upgraded kit. And as I say, you might look to upgrade the strength, and that is what frees up your budget to be able to upgrade the CV, because you do want that latest digital console, and at the minute you're on LCD. But then, as we said, going back to that life cycle, do always consider the longevity, because the higher the digital content down the line, the higher the cost of keeping that piece of equipment running, the higher the energy costs and usage with that as well. So maybe there's an opportunity to have a mix of kit. And all we're actually trying to do here is just help you guys understand that there's so many options out there that can help you basically get the most out of that first investment that you make in your equipment.